everyone, it's Ali from Vintage Page Designs. Today I'm going to show you how to make a very simple account binding book. It's a Japanese stab binding. For the pages we're going to use a sheet of the handmade white paper, and it's actually going to be constructed such that it can be used as a photo album, so that you can add pictures or postcards or whatever else you would like to stick in there. So I'm using a plain white paper. However, you could use like a textured dill paper like this, or even a coloured handmade paper. It's entirely up to you, but for today I am going to use the white. I'm going to show you how to create the signatures. They're just single sheets of paper, and we're going to tear this into 8 pieces. So this will just give you an idea of how to tear the handmade paper. There's always little bits of leaves on my desk. So just fold in half, line up the edges as best you can, because obviously the deckled edges are not straight. Grab your bone folder, break down the fibres. This is a if this were a very thick sheet, I would probably fold it over and go the other direction. It's actually not, but some of the other handmade papers are super thick. So you want to fold one way then the other to really break the fibres, so that when you tear, you get the tear going along the line that you would like, rather than sort of doing a really jagged edge. We've got this line here. You're going to press firmly down next to the crease and pull towards you, making tiny tears like that. I'm going to do this again. I like to have it sort of facing away so I can see those edges. And you're going to do that until you have 8 pieces. So you're going to wind up with 8 sheets of paper. I had a little stain on there, so I just rubbed it off with an eraser, and you can just sort of lift off the fibres. I swear that was chocolate. You'll end up with 8 pieces of paper, just like this. This is 6 1/4, I know, for the height. The length is about 9 3/4. For the covers, you're going to do the same thing with large sheets of handmade paper, or whichever paper you fancy. These are going to be my covers, the blue larkspur, front cover, back cover. But then on the inside, it's like an end sheet, I'm going to put the green. So it's going to go like this. I have to get around the right way. So in order to accommodate photographs, we are going to just discard the two cover pieces for now, just set them to one side, and we're going to score and fold a little flap over, which will be included in the binding, and it will give us like a little spacer, so that when we put in photographs or whatever else we're sticking in, the spine doesn't bulge too much. The book covers will be nice and flush. You'll sort of see what I mean once we get to that point. We're going to score in 2 places, once to fold over for our spacer, and then once again so that when the book opens it has a nice fold. It's easier to do the scoring before you bind the book. Occasionally I forget, but with these stab bound books it's easier to score ahead of time. I'm using a ruler that's 1 inch in width. I find an inch to be a good size, a good measurement for this size book. If I were doing a bigger book, I'd do a wider margin here. This is 1 inch. If you don't have a ruler that goes an inch like this, you could use a brass spacer bar. You could also make yourself a little spacer with a scrap piece of cardboard or bookboard, and use that to score against. So I'm going to score against this edge. Now I'm using my sort of gridded mat here to help me line things up, but to be honest, because we have the torn edge, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. Everything's slightly more approximate with the torn edges, which I think is really nice. I'm using a stylus here. You could also use the tip of your bone folder. Mine's a little bit thick, so I prefer something thinner, but the tip of a bone folder is fine. Whatever else that you use to score. I'm just going to score once. And I just fold it over so that, oops, wrong way around, so that I have something to push up against, and then I'm going to score again. And I'm going to do this for all of my pages. Alright, so I've scored all of my pages, and hopefully you can see that the underneath part is folded under like this, and then there's a score on the top. So hopefully that makes sense. You'll get another view of it when we put the whole thing together. So I might just put this under a weight while I do my covers. So put it to one side for a second. So here we have our 4 pieces of paper we're going to use as the covers. I'm going to cut 1 inch off each end to accommodate that fold, and I'm just going to use a super sharp knife and the 1 inch ruler again, and I'm going to take it off the end that I hand torn, not the deckled edge. I'm going to do that on all of them. This is also going to give us a nice straight edge to bind. It'll be easy to jog the pages and these cover pieces together to sew so they're even. Again, that'll probably make a whole lot more sense once we're putting it together. Whoopsie. Metal ruler is much better than the plastic kind, because with the plastic kind you can kind of nick it with the knife. You don't want to be doing that. It's actually, and it's safer too. And this blade I just replaced. I'll go through a lot of these knife blades. There we go. So discard those. And grab the stylus again, and we're going to score all these cover pieces. I'm going to score them next to that cut edge. I'm going to score them exactly the same way. Make sure you score on the front piece. I may just score the 2 front covers. I'm not sure we really need to score the back covers because you wouldn't be necessarily turning those over. Oopsie. Alright, stylus is gone. So, where's that cover? By all means, score these back too. Like I say, they're just going to sit at the back and they won't necessarily be folded. So I'm going to skip that step for now. But here's my 2 covers. Now I need to assemble everything and clip it firmly. But before we do that, I'm going to show you how to make the template that we'll be using. I just want to create a template out of scrap paper just so we know where to put our 2 sewing holes. This binding is really nice, it just has 2 holes. We want to get that prepared before we clamp everything down. This piece of scrap paper, just a piece of copy paper, is 6 1/4, so it's approximately the height of the book, give or take, because of the torn edge. And it's 1 1/2 inches wide. And the reason I did that is because when you fold it down the middle, that gives me a line at 3/4 inch. And that's where 3/4 inch is the line on which my holes are going to be drilled and sewn, which is just 1/4 inch to the left of our fold. I just did this in half just to save me measuring because I'm lazy. And then our holes are going to be, I'm going to choose to do them at 1 1/2 inches from the head of the book, 1 1/2 inches from the tail. But it's up to you. If you want to put them in a different position, you can. It's entirely up to you. Let me just make sure we can see those nicely. Alrighty, let's assemble this book. We've got our two covers, cover and end sheet, I guess. And here we're not going to stack these pages. We're going to stack these pages. We're not going to put them inside one another like this. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to stack them rather than nest them. That makes sense. Hopefully you can see on the video how I'm doing that. Just be sure they're stacked. Now this is what I was talking about before, having a straight edge, because we've got this folded edge which is straight and then these cut edges. It's going to make jogging them down. Just make sure you get these the right way around. It's going to make jogging them the end down a whole lot easier than if we were trying to jog down this deckled edge. First of all, we'd probably damage the paper, but secondly, you would never get that even. So having this straight edge here is actually really helpful. And it's going to take a little bit of futzing to get that right. So we're going to use these clips. Use some clips. We don't want these clips to damage the paper, so we're just going to use scraps. Like I say, fuss away with this to make it all even. Do one in the middle. These are not, these could use being a tad bigger, but that's okay. And then maybe a couple at the side. So this scratch paper will protect. I really like the way the green is sort of poking out here. It's kind of nice. I'm not sure I necessarily like it coming out the end. I might adjust that. There we go. So it's all clamped down. Let's grab our template. Now you could drill through these holes, but it tends to make a bit of a mess. So what I tend to do is to grab an awl and just poke the marks through this scrap paper where I'm going to drill the holes like that. And then this can be discarded. Alrighty, my friends, so we have our book clipped, we have the holes marked. I am using the Fiskars hand drill to make my holes, and a what is it, 16th drill bit. This is $10 from Amazon. It didn't come without the drill bit, so I just got a little set from my local hardware store. To make these holes, you can also use a Japanese hole punch or a crocodile. I would just make sure that you keep the book block together. You don't punch the holes separately, because they'll just never line up. I'm going to put down a board so that I don't go through my plastic mat. I'm just going to weigh down my book. You can see I've already done the holes, but I'm just going to show. I'm just going to weight this down with a brick. Put a piece of paper there to protect the book, because I normally cover these bricks in book cloth. I'm just going to go in at a 90-degree angle and drill your hole, going all the way through till you hit the wood, and then reversing. It's a little bit messy because the sort of paper fibres come out, but just sort of clean that out and you're good to go. Right, now we'll get to the fun part, which is the sewing. You can remove this clip for the sewing, but I would leave the two side ones in place. Alright, so the size of the holes, just to backtrack a little bit, the size of the holes is going to somewhat depend upon what thread you're going to bind it with. So if you're using a leather cord like this, you'd go with a bigger hole. I would do much bigger than that. I'm using a piece of seam binding, so my hole feels appropriate. If you were just using some thin, say, linen thread, like a 3 or 4 ply, you do a smaller hole. So that it sort of depends on what you plan to use. I'm using a tapestry needle. Just keep in mind with the hole that you're going to be going through it twice. so it needs to be big enough for whatever your binding material is to go through twice. And I usually cut 2 pieces of ribbon and about 3 or 4 times the height of the book. Let me see, I've cut like sometimes it helps to cut it to a point, but this goes through fairly easily. Just thread it like you would a needle and thread. Start from the back of your book and come through the hole. Pull it through a little more than halfway. Then wrap the seam binding or ribbon around the edge, keeping it flat, and come back up through that hole. And don't push the needle through the ribbon, push it through the hole. Pull tight and wrap the needle and ribbon around the head of the book. I'm just trying to flatten this out and come back underneath again. Just sort of pulling the ribbon aside so the needle could come through without splitting it. At this point you could readjust the length of these so they're even. I'm going to unthread this. I may just make this, oops, wrong direction, make this a little longer. Alrighty, so when you've sewn both sides, even up your pieces of ribbon, and then we're going to tie a square knot sort of lined up in the center, just leaving a little bit of slack so that the this can be used to hang it up, because this account binding is traditional type of book that's actually meant to be hung up, which is kind of neat, don't you think? I'm not going to do it, but if you had a thinner ribbon or cord, you could add beads or different charms to hang off them. You could put them here before you tie the knot or afterwards. There's a lot of scope for embellishment. So remove the binder clips and admire your work. How cute is that? Open up like this, and it's helpful because we've pre-scored the pages, and then you can sort of add old postcards, photographs to the pages using photo corners, and the addition of that folded edge is going to act like a spacer so that our book doesn't get too bulgy. So I hope you enjoyed the project, and show me what you make. And if you have any questions or comments, leave it in the comments below, or post in the Facebook group, or email me. Thanks so much. Have fun. Bye.